For me, a good KPI is a KPI which is linked to the overall purpose of whatever we are analyzing. And part of the message in my session was linked or is linked to defining KPIs in a bigger strategic thinking context. So, your question, what is a good KPI? It actually depends, because it depends on why are we doing what we're doing. So the KPIs needs to support a strategy process, and strategy starts with analyzing resources, opportunities, stakeholders, and so on, but has a goal definition part. Once you have defined the goal, for example, I think in the session different types of goals were mentioned. Some cities bid on events or attract the events from a destination marketing perspective. So the purpose of the city being active is that they want to put the city on a map. They want to create awareness. If this is the purpose, then, of course, attracting event, city branding is part of it, and attracting events is the strategy. KPIs would then be, how good are we at doing it? Do we actually attract more visitors through these events? What is the occupancy rate on hotels? What is the number of bed nights? So this is a classical destination marketing type of KPI. I think the biggest challenge is that we don't know really, or we don't define well enough why we're doing it. It's very, very difficult to define KPIs if you haven't a crisp understanding of what are we really doing. A lot of organization wants to do everything. They want to do destination marketing. They want to do urban development. They want to do welfare of the city. They want to do a lot of things. And it becomes very difficult to measure whether our strategies work if we don't have a clear definition of what is the overall purpose. And this actually means creating a hierarchy of goals. It doesn't mean that if your main purpose is destination marketing, that you cannot always also do health or urban development. But if you really want to measure what you are doing from a strategic perspective works, you kind of have to create a hierarchy of goals, and a lot of organizations are struggling with this.
That's the principles of strategy. Like, you have to make choice.
That is the whole point, because also if we take it into a strategic orientation, how do you, first of all, how do you learn if you don't know what the final objective is? But also it's a matter of how do you allocate resources. So if you want to do everything, you allocate resources in a inefficient type of way. There could be another risk of having multiple goals, and that is zigzagging. That is that for one period of the year, you focus a lot on, tourism and destination. Then you suddenly find out, but by the way, we should also do something else. And not always, but you run the risk of also losing momentum on the areas. And this is part of putting KPIs into a strategic thinking and a strategic planning context. Normally, it's indicated as this. Otherwise, from an academic point of view, we would call them objectives. So you can easily use measures in a proactive, future-oriented way, but then they become targets. So it's the same thing. It's a measure for what we want to obtain, but technically speaking, we wouldn't call them, at least in an academic context, we wouldn't call them KPIs. We would say these are targets, these are goals. We want to obtain these type of results, and then we will do strategies. We will try to do something in order to obtain the targets, and then we will measure, did we meet them? So did we reach, or did we get closer to our targets, our objectives, and that would be the performance. So my point was that I think that we live in a world where activation and engagement is becoming more and more important, actually not just for the cities, but also for the IFs. And I think there is a little bit lack of creativity in terms of, also strategic planning. First of all, in setting targets on how ambitious are we in terms of activation from a city perspective. But I know I mentioned the cities, but I could have mentioned the IFs as well, because it's the two of them together that I think struggles with coming up with new ideas on how we can use events in engaging, lasting, legacy creating type of ways. So the point really is, let's put engagement and activation as part of the objective, and let's start these learning loops. Let's experiment. There is no guarantee for success in the beginning. Actually, because it's new for a lot of cities, and especially new for a lot of international federations, the first experiments with activation, I don't think they will work. So, but that's not an excuse for not trying. We need to get the cities and the IFs more in line with making experiments. I think we heard in the conference, I think we heard some fantastic stories. The Bike Week, Bike City Copenhagen experience with UCI on how in the beginning it's tough, but then once you start a partnership and you get the IF and the city on board with a common goal, you can actually release a lot of creative thinking, which is to the benefit of everybody, to the benefit of the citizens, of the hosting city, of the sport, and everybody. So I think we need to be more creative there.